lesson is on population growth. We'll be looking at the various components that actually make up the population growth rate. And to understand all the various factors that are in the equation. And of course, then we'll take a look at a problem set so that you'll actually use the equation and see how that works. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and list all the components of the equation. First thing that we're going to do is, of course, look at the growth rate that we're going to call capital R. And then there's another element or factor is the birth rate, how many infants are added to the annual growth rate. And then the immigration with the letter I, that means all of the individuals are going to be added to that population from somewhere else as they maybe, for instance, come in or migrate in from a different area. And then we look at the death rate, which is the small case d. And then emigration with the letter E, those that leave the area. And that, of course, is, like I said, the letter E. So the equation looks something like this. It's the growth rate is calculated by the birth rate, how many infants or babies are added to that, plus immigration, the letter I, all those individuals from another area that migrate in. Then we're going to take those two numbers, add them together, and subtract it from all of those individuals that will be leaving the population, either by death or by exiting immigration. And we'll add those two things together. Now, basically what this says is when we take a look at a population growth, we've got to take in consideration of these two elements. Individuals that are being added to the population on a yearly basis and those who are being removed. What it's saying is if population rate increases, then this part of the equation is going to be growing or moving at a faster rate than this side. So if population rate is dropping, then the death and the immigration rate is climbing. So that gives you kind of an idea of how it goes. It's going to be R equals B, birth rate, plus immigration. Add those two together, and then we're going to subtract it from death rate and, of course, the immigration rate, the little e. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And so let's take a problem and let's see how that works. So let's go ahead and put this equation to work. I found this on the internet. There's a place called Bird Island. It has 428 birds on the island, and each year approximately 28 chicks are born each and every year, and approximately 110 birds die through natural causes as well as disease. And then we have 52 birds that emigrate from another place, from another island, and come in. And then there's 74 birds who emigrate or leave the island and go to other islands that are surrounding it. Now, when we were taking a look at the equation, the first question is what is the birth rate of the birds on the island? So if we are going to go ahead and use this factor of birth rate, we know that there are 282 birds that are being born. So we're going to write that down, 282 birds, the letter B. And then what is the death rate of those birds? We also know. We're going to use the letter D for death rate. And we know each year approximately 110 die. And then we go to any additional birds added to it this year. And that's when they're added to it from somewhere else, they immigrate onto the island. And that's an additional 52 birds that we have. And we'll call that equals the letter I. And then what is the total growth rate? Well, we're going to need our equation for that. So it's going to be the letter R. That's our growth rate. And then we're going to, that's going to equal all the animals or all the birds that migrate in or are born that year. That's 282. That is the actual birth rate. And then what we're going to do with that one is we're going to add it to those 52 birds who come in from another island. So that in that first parentheses represent the new birds that are out of the population. And then we're going to subtract it from the birds that actually leave, either through death, the letter D, and that would be 110. And where I got that is right here. And then we're going to add that to the other birds that leave through immigration. It's right there, 74 birds. So when we add it up, we have 184 birds that have left the scene. And then here it's going to be 334 birds that are added to it. So if we subtract these two, 334, and we're going to subtract 184, that's going to bring us to 150 birds will be added to the population this particular year. So that's what will be our annual growth rate. And so we'll have 150 birds that are added to it. So you can see how this particular equation works. Pretty straightforward. We have a population movement, and we're talking about basically two things. For instance, about dispersal. That means animals are leaving the area primarily because it could be overcrowded and they don't want to compete with their parents for food and shelter and that kind of thing. An example of that is some species of spiders, what they call balloon. They're ballooning. In other words, like this one right up here, he's allowing a little bit of his web to come out, and he's waiting for a gust of wind to pick him up and take him. And thousands, maybe even millions of spiders in some areas of the country are ballooning around the fall time of year, like on this bottom picture right here. So it's a way for them to disperse and get away from their parents, to start in a different environment and different habitat, and they don't have to compete for the food and the shelter and area that their parents are in. Whereas the other population movement device is migration. That's where individuals or populations in a seasonal basis actually move to another location so that, again, they can take advantage of other kind of resources in different parts of the world. And a good example of that are the waterfowl. And since we live here in California, we see that quite a bit on the Pacific Flyway. And this is the time of year when birds are moving in, starting to move south and get out of the cold area so they can have milder wintering grounds. So I hope that you've seen a little bit, have a little bit better picture of how to use the population growth equation and how to calculate growth rates. You'll be seeing that on tests, but also you'll be able to do some of the problem sets that you're going to get. And then, of course, we talk about population movement, dispersal, not competing with their parents for resources, and then migration, kind of spreading themselves around so they get plenty of resources. So I hope this has helped you.